You're listening to Full Circle Weekly news of the open source community presented by Full Circle Magazine. These articles are compiled by Eric the Unready, and I'm your host, Moss Bliss. This is episode 404, and I still found the script, covering week 10, March 3rd to 9th, 2025. The OTA 8 Focal firmware has been released by the UBports project. This is the 8th release of Ubuntu Touch based on the Ubuntu 20.04 package base. The project also develops an experimental port of the Lomiri desktop. Ubuntu Touch OTA 8 Focal update will be generated in the coming days for all the usual phones. Builds have been added for Xiaomi Poco M2 Pro, Xiaomi Redmi Note 9 Pro /Pro Max /95, Volla Phone Quintus, and Volla Tablet. The development of the new release focused on preparing for the transition to the newer LTS branch of Ubuntu. Support for VoLTE has been implemented. Using VoLTE is currently only possible on Vollaphone X23 and Vollaphone 22 smartphones, the firmware for which uses Helium 12 system components. OpenBot 0.8 Open Platform has been released, designed to create moving wheeled robots based on a regular Android smartphone. The platform was created in the research division of Intel and develops the idea of using the computing capabilities of a smartphone and the built-in GPS, gyroscope, compass, and camera in the creation of robots. The code, written in Swift and Java, is distributed under the MIT license. It is assumed that the platform can be useful for teaching robotics, quickly creating your own prototypes of moving robots, and conducting research related to autopilots and autonomous navigation. OpenBot allows you to start experimenting with moving robots at a minimum cost. To create a robot, you can get by with a mid-range smartphone and additional components totaling about US $50. The chassis for the robot, as well as related parts for attaching the smartphone, are printed on a 3D printer according to the proposed layouts. Movement is provided by 4 electric motors. To control the engines, attachments, and additional sensors, as well as to monitor the battery charge, an Arduino Nano board is used, connected to the smartphone via USB port. Additionally, connection of speed sensors and ultrasonic sonar is supported. Remote control of the robot can be carried out via a client application for Android, via a computer located on the same Wi-Fi network, via a net browser, or via a game controller with Bluetooth support, for example PS4, Xbox, and X3. The free Godot 4.4 game engine has been released, suitable for creating 2D and 3D games. The engine supports an easy-to-learn game logic language, a graphical environment for designing games, a one-click game deployment system, animation and physics simulation capabilities, a built-in debugger, and a performance bottleneck detection system. The code for the game engine, game design environment, and related development tools is distributed under the MIT license. Thunderbird 136.0, a community-developed email client based on Mozilla technologies, has been released. Thunderbird 136 is built on the Firefox 136 codebase and is categorized as an intermediate version with updates released before the next release. Thunderbird 128.8.0 has been released in the ESR branch, which has a long-term support period, and updates are released throughout the year. The publication of Thunderbird 136.0 marked a change in the approach to forming releases. In addition to the previous scheme in which a major release was formed once a year and based on the ESR branches of Firefox, major releases will now also be published once a month and based on the Firefox releases with a regular maintenance period. Thunderbird 136 is offered by default and without the label of being intended for testing only. The formation and maintenance of the Thunderbird ESR branches will continue without changes. It is expected that the transition to monthly major releases will speed up the delivery of new features to users, smooth the transition to new major releases, and expand the range of bugs fixed with each update. The ESR branch only fixed vulnerabilities and serious issues in the past. An engineer from Intel has prepared a change to support the second version of the eUSB 2 extension. The change has been transferred to the USB Next branch, which tests the Linux kernel functionality planned for release 6.15 related to USB. eUSB 2v2 is an extension of the USB 2.0 standard that reduces the supply voltage to 1.2 volts and increases performance. The data transfer rate in eUSB 2v2 can reach 4.8 gigabytes per second, 10 times faster than what is typical for USB 2. The proposed technology allows laptop manufacturers to equip their devices with higher resolution webcams while continuing to use the embedded USB 2 bus for connecting them. FerretDB 2.0 is now available. The code is written in Go and is licensed under Apache 2.0 license. The release is marked as ready for production deployments. FerretDB's primary target audience is MongoDB users who want to use a fully open-source software stack. FerretDB supports a subset of MongoDB features that are most commonly used in typical applications. The need for FerretDB may arise due to MongoDB's proprietary SSPL license, which is based on the AGPL-v3 license but is not open source because it contains a discriminatory requirement to distribute under the SSPL license not only the application code itself but also the source code of all components involved in providing the cloud service. The key change in FerretDB 2.0 is the transition to DocumentDB, a Microsoft-opened extension to PostgreSQL that implements the ability to store data in a binary JSON format compatible with MongoDB. The transition to DocumentDB has increased FerretDB's performance by more than 20 times for some types of workload. Other new features in FerretDB 2.0 include the improved compatibility with MongoDB, replication, and support for vector search. The FEX 2503 project has been published. It develops an emulator for running games and applications built for x86 and x86-64 architectures in a Linux environment on systems with ARM64, AArch64 processors. The FEX emulator is used by the Asahi project to run games from the Steam catalog built for the x86-64 architecture on systems with ARM chips. Project code is written in C++ with assembler inserts and is distributed under the MIT license. Libraries required to run x86 applications in the ARM64 environment are connected in the form of an overlay layer with rootfs supplied in the squashfs format. Such an overlay makes it possible to do without creating a separate chroot environment. Loading of rootfs images already generated by the project is performed by the FEX rootfs fetcher utility. Engineers from Google have disclosed details of a vulnerability, CVE 2024-56161, that allows bypassing the digital signature verification mechanism when updated microcode in AMD processors based on the first to fourth generations of the Zen microarchitecture. At the same time, the Zen Tool Toolkit, developed during the study of methods for working with microcode in AMD processors, was published under the Apache 2.0 license. A guide to the RISC-86 microarchitecture used in AMD microcode and a note on creating your own microcode were also prepared. The Zen Tool Toolkit has been developed, which allows you to analyze microcode, manipulate microcode, and create patches that can be used to change the microcode in AMD Zen processors. In the future, the developers plan to continue expanding the capabilities of the toolkit and provide a kind of analog of binutils for microcode. The 2025 Academy Award for Best Animated Feature Film has been awarded to the animated film Flow, directed by Latvian Gints Zilbalotis. The film follows the adventures of a cat during a flood and was created by an independent team on a limited budget using the free 3D modeling system Blender. Work on the film lasted 5.5 years. Samba 4.22.0 was released, continuing the development of the Samba 4 branch with a full implementation of a domain controller and Active Directory service, compatible with the Windows 2008 implementation and capable of servicing all Microsoft-supported versions of Windows clients, including Windows 11. Samba 4 is a multifunction server product and also provides the implementation of a file server, print service, and identification server. Pipewire 1.4.0 Stable Multimedia Server is out. It differs from Pulse Audio by adding tools for working with video streams, the ability to process sound with minimal delays, and a new security model for managing access at the level of individual devices and streams. The project is supported in GNOME and is used by default in Fedora Linux, RHEL, Ubuntu, Debian, SUSE/OpenSUSE, and many other Linux distributions. The project code is written in C and is distributed under the MIT license. Collabora has introduced the Apertis 2025.0 Linux distribution, originally created for automotive systems, but reoriented for a wider range of electronic devices, embedded equipment, and industrial equipment. Examples of devices where Apertis is used include the Atari VCS gaming console, Raspberry Pi 4 boards, R-Car automotive SoCs, and the Bosch Detect 200 wall scanner. Reference system images are distributed for the x86-64, ARM64, and ARM-HF architectures. The distribution is based on packages from Debian GNU/Linux 12, is modular, and allows device manufacturers to independently form the necessary system environment filling. Formation of builds based on traditional DEB packages and monolithic atomically updated images based on OS/3 are supported. Apertis allows you to create builds that do not include code under the GPL-v3 family of licenses, instead of using outdated versions of GNU utilities created before the transition to the GPL-v3 license. Apertis uses more modern alternatives under permissive licenses. For those who do not care about the legal issues associated with GPLv3, the option of using traditional utility sets is left in. The Apertis project adheres to the Debian development rules and includes only applications that are supplied under open licenses or allow free distribution. In order for companies creating their products based on Apertis to be sure of the license purity of derivative works, a software bill of materials report is generated for each build, which indicates information about the licenses of all used code files, as well as data on program versions, which is also convenient for checking vulnerable versions. Google included the Linux Terminal app in the March Android 15 firmware update for Google Pixel devices. The app allows you to run a Debian GNU Linux virtual machine in the Android environment where you can run regular Linux applications. Linux Terminal is activated in the developer settings. For this option to appear, you need to activate the developer mode. After the first launch, the application offers to download a virtual machine image with Linux to the device, which takes up about 500 megabytes. The Terminal application is being developed in the Android open source project repository in the core Android platform. The functionality of the Linux virtual machine is being developed within the Ferrochrome project. Debian GNU Linux 12 is running in the guest environment. The Android virtualization framework is used for virtualization, implemented based off the KVM hypervisor and the CrossVM toolkit. You've been listening to Full Circle Weekly News. For more details, see the next issue of the magazine at fullcirclemagazine.org or check the links in the show notes. You can contact me at bardmoss@pm.me. I'll see you next week.